Creek Week.
Creek Week.
Welcome everybody to the Creek this week.
The special guest.
The video, with the special guest Janora
Creek Week.
Gelly. So she doesn't talk yet.
No.
Okay.
It's the closest we get.
Well, she's got the good looks going on, so she's got that
Gets
going
those from
for
her dad.
If she could talk, she would tell you that this is the video blog of Allen Creek Community Church.
That's right, where we exist to lead spiritual but not religious people into full devotion to Jesus Christ. So we're in the book of Job this month leading up to Easter.
That's why Janora's here is kind
that's
of
just a barrel of fun, isn't
balance that barrel of laughs out.
That's a barrel of laughs.
We
So
got a cute baby to make
we
sure.
actually got a lot of great response just because, as we introduced the series this week, it is the universal condition that human beings suffer. So we also heard just an amazing story this last week from our elder James about a family that it's like a Job parallel, only in modern times. And I guess leading us to just take this out of sort of the fantasy, there once was a man once upon a time who suffered a lot, and right into the present of someone who just had unimaginable suffering. And could you have the kind of response that Job had, which is great. And to see that the man's faith in God walked him through that valley of the shadow of death. Now this week we're going to look where, in some sense, isn't it like chapter 3 where like a bit of almost like the mask gets off. It's not that Job's initial response is wrong, certainly not wrong, it's not inauthentic, but it is not the full depth of what he's experiencing. When he says in chapter 2, the Lord gives, the Lord takes away, blessed be the name of the Lord, and in all these things Job did not sin, it's like, that's a bit of a gloss, isn't it? Because in chapter 3, it gets bad. He fully dives into the grief. I wish I had never been born. And talk about that, guys. And you almost see this analog with the mental health crisis we're experiencing with youth these days, of just this desire that suicidality's up.
Yeah.
This idea, this feeling, I wish I had never been born, is not like just a one-off. Lots of people are in this mode.
I like the story of Job for the later parts of Job.
Yeah.
Where we kind of get some answers to some of this.
Right.
But just as a youth pastor, I'm kind of in that world. I'm seeing it all the time. And actually from 2011 to 2021, there was an increase in suicidal ideation of from 8% to 10%. But on the other side of it, which is some cool things, is sexual risky behavior is down.
Oh, yeah.
So
Well,
there's
that's good.
that's great.
Yeah.
But now we have this other crisis of depression, whether situational or whatever it might be, similar to Job.
I'm too sad to pursue risky sexual behavior.
Right. Hopelessness, man. They're just hopeless.
Yeah, wow.
And, I know Dan has been through a lot of situations where he's had to walk with families through some of this.
Yeah.
And I'm right now, currently in our youth group, we are doing a series on depression. And we're talking about that because we realize that that's an important topic for our kids, for our adults, for the people in our world today. It's like hopelessness has gone up an exponential amount. And so that's why I love that our church is in this series. It's like this amazing thing of now we have an opportunity to talk about it. It's not just this ominous out there thing. It's like in front of us.
And you realize that really great and awesome biblical characters, like not the villains of the story, but the heroes of the story, experience suicidality, right? Like Elijah, Job. So what you're running into, Dan, out there of, like people experiencing massive amounts of trauma, maybe that charts a way for us to process our grief in a good way.
Yeah, there's so many different pathways through grief, and I think one of the biggest struggles that I see people encountering when I'm with a family in crisis is the shoulds and the oughtas, because people have a sense, and we can kind of go back to the Job story for this. We think we've been told that we have to experience suffering in a certain way. So family will often say this. It's like, I should be doing this, or I should have done that, and the reality is there's not. There's not a should. And we see that in Job's story, that, like you said, the pious response that he had at first, authentic, but finally at the end of the day, you can only handle so much. And really what it comes down to is I can't handle this anymore. I can't imagine getting through the next minute.
Right.
And
Yeah, that's
sometimes
good.
what we refer to in the chaplaincy is a psychological first aid, and sometimes that's just getting somebody through the next couple of minutes.
Right.
And so that's when we come down to things like, okay, let's breathe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's look around the room and find some things that we can focus on. Let's try and get in touch with the moment, because the
Yes.
suffering is so intense. It's the feeling of, I want to get out of my skin. I cannot
It's the
be
psychological equivalent of 2 fingers here, to stop the bleeding, like where someone's just
here. Right. right.
bleeding out emotionally.
And we see this in some of the earliest literature, probably the earliest literature in the Bible, is this experience. This is universal. This is how humans encounter and respond to catastrophic loss.
Yeah.
And there's nothing. This is the thing. There's nothing wrong with you
Yeah.
because you're suffering.
Yeah.
Right.
You're not broken because you're suffering. We only try to deploy broken solutions.
Yeah.
The suffering itself is not brokenness.
I was
That's so good.
in a funeral with a close family member, and I was talking to someone who, through that day, there was a viewing, and then there was the service, and then there was a graveside, and we were at the tail end, and this person turned to me and said, "Well, I've managed to hold it together for most of it." And I turned to them, and I said, that's not your job today. Your job today is not to hold it together.
Yeah.
And I just wanted that to be permission giving.
Yeah, that's good.
That person could be like Job and sit in ashes and
Yeah.
be okay to be overwhelmed with loss and have no answers.
It's okay to not be okay.
Right.
Yeah, there you
Right. And this is, God enters into grief with us. We talk a little bit about this. I know it's somewhat cliche, but the shortest verse in the Bible is John 11:35. Jesus wept. He entered into loss. And you think, well, shouldn't God have hope? Shouldn't God have the eternal perspective? Well, yeah, but here he is incarnate, and his good friend is dead, and death is an enemy, and there's anger in Jesus about that. And then his friends are here, Mary and Martha, and the mourners are gathered around. He feels all their pain, and he just enters into that with you. So God understands your loss because he too has cried. He too has lost. And that's, I think, good news in the middle of suffering. Before we even get to hope, which comes, and by the way, and we will move into that, where
Love that.
from our Christian perspective, everything we experience is so temporary. But in the temporary moment, it feels permanent. It feels all-consuming, and God understands that, and he will walk Job through. And with great understanding, allow Job to beat his fists against God's chest, and he will say impious things. And this is a hero of the story. So I guess AC3, let that be a lesson for us, that when we are going through great, and what did you call it, Dent? Incapacitating loss? What was your phrase?
I don't know. Rewind it.
It was really good. But that great and incapacitating loss, that God is permission giving to allow us to enter in and to experience all of the horror of it, and to be there to comfort us and to walk us through. So let us be those kinds of comfort givers to others who are in their season of loss as well.
And here's some joy.
Unless you're in a season of joy and you just have this little bundle of happiness.
Joy.
Joy, new life.
You're just deploying her like a joy tool.
Yeah.
Here's joy.
Touch this and you will be happy.
My name's not Joy.
Rubber belly, and
As
that makes you
as
happy.
a new parent, sometimes it is not joy.
This is true.
I want to be real.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk
Speaking of
suffering.
autism,
Change that diaper.
there's some suffering.
Oh gosh, blowouts.